You know, he wants you to get up and groove to his plan. That's right. The prophet, when he teaches, he wants you to move to the rhythm of the word.
Yes, sir.
Because the rhythm of the word tells you what time it is,
Yes, sir.
and what must be done.
Yes, sir.
Lovest thou me? Then on the airwaves, brother, feed the sheep of God.
Yes, sir.
Lovest thou me? And when you have a chance, feed the little ones.
There you go. There you go.
Don't forget the children.
Thank you, brother.
Don't forget the babies. They are the most priceless gift of God to us is our children. So while you're feeding, prepare something for the babies. Then you will demonstrate how much you love God, like a woman who says to her husband, "Oh, sweetheart, I love you so much." "You do, baby?" "Yes, you know I love you." "Well, tell me this. If you love me, why does my child look like the neighbor down the street?"
You got to ask a question.
Is that a rough one?
You got to ask a question.
I didn't mean it in that jocular kind of way, but what I'm trying to say is, if you love Jesus and you love Muhammad, then you make children that look like him.
Yes. Yes.
That's what I'm
Yes,
saying.
sir.
So if you tell me you love the prophet, then everywhere I look, I should see him being produced again and again and again by the way you handle the word of the Quran. If you tell me you love Jesus, then I should see Jesus everywhere I look when I'm among Christians. I should not only see him, I should feel his presence. You didn't hear me? That's what gives meaning to the words, where there are 2 or 3 of you gathered together in my name, there I am also in the midst of you. You cannot bury a prophet of God. You can only bury the flesh that he traveled in.
Come on.
This is why the Quran teaches, speak not of those who die or are slain in the way of God as dead. They are alive, but you understand not. How does Jesus live? How does Moses live? How does Abraham live? How does Muhammad live? How do we live? We live by embodying the principles that undergirded their lives. Then they live again in us. Does that make sense? So that's what a minister's words on the radio gave to me to give to you. Now, what I wanted to say is, we are dealing with a ruthless enemy that is planning and has planned the destruction of us as a people. And that destruction is going on hourly and by the minute and by the second. And if we don't do something as quickly as possible, we will find maybe in the next 20 years, as a people, we might not exist. The fact that we are suffering from a chemical and biological plague of death. The chemical plague is drugs, crack cocaine. The biological plague is AIDS. And AIDS and drugs have entered into all our families. And when any member of our family becomes addicted to crack, that chemical, which reaches the pleasure center of the brain, means more to them than their mother, their father, and integrity and honesty and character, because the crack addict becomes a devil in your house. A liar, a thief, and maybe soon a murderer. This is all part of a conspiracy to make black people unworthy of the promise that God has promised after 400 years of our enslavement in a strange land. He would bring us out afterwards with great substance. And we who are the last would be the first. We who are the bottom rail would come to the top. We who are the lost would be found by God and settled on the mountains of Israel to reflect God and be the cornerstone of his universal government of peace. That is God's promise to us as his people. Now we are so messed up that our ancestors looking at us could grieve themselves to death again, because we are doing to ourselves and to one another what we never did during the worst days of slavery. Now, we have had many great teachers, and each teacher that came to us, we responded to a degree. But if that teacher was genuinely a good teacher for us, our former slave masters and their children vilified that teacher so that the masses would never see that teacher as he really was and respond to the ideas that he brought for our liberation. Then when that teacher died, they corrupted the idea of that teacher so that the teacher's ideas were no longer recognized among his followers, who kept his name going but were disconnected from the power of his idea. This is a smart enemy that we're dealing with. The Bible puts it like this, Paul speaking: we war not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and the rulers of the darkness of this world and spiritual wickedness in high places. Now, it ain't the flesh and the blood. I mean, you can see some wicked people every day. You wake up in the morning, you see it in your house. You ain't got to go too far. You come out your apartment, you hardly can speak to your neighbor. You look at people as they walk the streets of New York, and they all look like, I'm on my way to work, but got my paper under my arm or something else under my arm. And we look like we're all strange.
Listen.
Nobody, good morning. In the olden days, when we saw a fellow traveler, we didn't know him. Good morning. How are you today? None of your damn business. That's the answer you get today. But in those days, we would say, I'm fine, thank you. And how are you? In those days, I had to be careful because I cussed a lot. And when I would move out of my house and start my tirade, my neighbor would open the window. Is that you, Jane? You better watch your mouth. I'm going to tell your mother why you're talking, you know. So I'd get tore up by the neighbor and get ripped up by mama. So it was a village, and there was a sense of community, and there was a feeling of belonging. So even though we were oppressed and in a very poor condition, the richness of our spirit was what made white people say, I really don't understand how you people can have that big smile on your face and you seem so sweet. You know, how do you do this? Because we may have been poor, but we were rich in the spirit of brotherly love that existed among us. Some of us never even locked our doors in those days. Today, you can't discipline your neighbor's child. Oh, no, no, no. You hit my son? And he got a gun in his hand now. We have become a totally savage people. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad defined the term savage. He said a savage is a person who has lost the knowledge of himself and is living a beast life. And that's the level that we're on right now. We're worse off than we were in the 60s. How many of you were around in the civil rights and nationalist struggle of the 60s? May I see your hands, please? Okay, now, I'm going to say something, and they'll bear witness to it, and I want you that came after the 60s to listen to what I'm saying to them. Now, one of our great teachers was the Right Honorable Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey had a love for Africa and a love for us, and he wanted to see black people in America reconnect to our ancient past in Africa. We had somebody like Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. Booker T was looked at as a Tom, you know, but he was a skillful man.